Welcome to Everyday Martial Artist, a weekly podcast where you'll join me, Brian Doucette, as I interview a different martial artist each episode and hear their story. Some guests you may have heard of, and some you probably haven't. Be sure to subscribe where all your favorite podcasts are available. Also visit our website at everydaymartialartist.com. If you're listening for a specific interview, I sure hope you'll stay and check out the other episodes. A very special thank you to Topher Williams for our custom theme music. And now, the newest episode of Everyday Martial Artist. Everyday Martial Artist is brought to you by KOOnline.com for all your martial arts needs. Sparring and safety gear, rank belts, uniforms, weapons, patches, and more. Wholesale supplies made by martial artists for martial artists. Visit us today at ko-online.com. Hello and welcome to Everyday Martial Artist. I'm your host, Brian Doucette, and as we do every Thursday, we're joined by a brand new guest talking about their life and their journey throughout the world of martial arts. My guest today holds a BS in biology with a minor in psychology, as well as a BA in AOS and network engineering. He's been training in martial arts for over 40 years, was the manager and head instructor of the Glendale Jhoon Rhee School. In Arizona, he served for 5 years as the vice president and head instructor of America's Best Karate. In 2004, moved back to Virginia and became the co-owner and head instructor of Jhoon Rhee Arlington. He's trained over 20 national champions, as well as training law enforcement. One of his current notable students is Ian Armitage from TV's Young Sheldon. He is currently a 7th grade black belt, married with 3 kids. He loves snowboarding and has heliboarded in 3 countries. Please welcome my guest today, Mr. Francis Pineda. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing good. I appreciate you taking the time to do this. What we like to do and how we kick things off, I want to go back to the very beginning. What led to your first intro into martial arts and kind of what led to that first spark in you getting involved?
I think I was a victim of probably one of the greatest martial arts marketing commercials ever made, and this was Jhoon Rhee's "Nobody Bothers Me" commercial. I was a fan of martial arts. I used to watch Kung Fu Action Theater on Saturdays, and if you're from the Washington D.C. area, you've seen it, and it's got a really catchy jingle. It was written by a gentleman from Bruce Springsteen's E Street Band. And at the very end, it's like, nobody bothers me. And big USA 1000 popped on the screen. And the rest is history, really, because,
Wow.
I wanted to do it. It's like, yeah, I want to do it. And at that time, they had 12 locations, and one was very close to me. So I signed up as a kid, and I was sucked in by that commercial.
So once you started then, what kind of drew you in and made you want to stay?
I think I think I had some very good instructors. I think my instructors, and I learned from them still up to date, my instructors did a great job of not just teaching great martial arts, but they were very inspirational at the same time. And I think it was kind of like that push, like, you can do this, you're better than you think you are. And just like martial arts is, everything's about setting small goals, and they just did such a fantastic job of pushing that, and then of course our figurehead was Grandmaster Jhoon Rhee, and he was Mr. Lead by Example himself, and would just, had such impact on me as a kid, just through his words, through his philosophy. He used to do some cool demonstrations, and he really just kind of drew me in. And gosh, I don't know, I can almost think that by 12 or 13, I told myself I was going to be a martial arts instructor.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it was just, a good instructor teaches, but a great instructor inspires. And I really think I had the benefit of having some really great instructors.
So now when you got your first degree black belt, did you actually get to test then under Jhoon Rhee?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. This was, yeah. And funny, I was actually just talking about that. I have a group of black belts right now that I'm teaching at my school. And I was telling them about my black belt exam. And it was something big. I mean, at the time we had 12 Jhoon Rhee schools, and we all kind of gathered, and it was big. And at that time there were 5 masters that graded you.
Okay.
And there were like 40 plus of us that got together. And this was like a 7-8 hour test. And
Wow.
it was pretty grueling. And I think the pass fail ratio at the time was 50%. I think out of 42, 20 passed.
Really?
And kind of what I was telling my students, I said, that's going to be a test that you're never going to forget.
Yeah.
From when
That's
you're
crazy.
going to really feel like you earned it. So that's for sure.
I thought my 2.5 hour test was bad. That's crazy.
You can do a lot in 2.5 hours.
Yes, you
Don't
can.
get me wrong.
Yes, you can. Especially when there's only 3 of you testing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it was kind of intense. So nice.
Crazy.
So what do you remember about that test other than, that? What are some of the things you had to do, and how different is it from the black belt test you conduct nowadays?
Wow. It was something else. Like I said, there were over 40 people that were testing. I can almost swear that I must have lost 10 pounds just in sweat. And yeah, I mean, it's very different than it is today. And I told my students that I left with a black eye, a bruised throat, and a pulled hamstring.
Wow.
And it was kind of rough, and the thing too is that, the 5 masters that were grading us were Grandmaster Jhoon Rhee, his oldest son, Jimmy Rhee, my instructor, Michael Coles, who was a welterweight kickboxing champion.
Okay.
And then on top of that was Jeff Smith, who is also a heavyweight kickboxing champion.
Yep.
And then Dongju Lee, who is a Pan Am champion in Taekwondo. So they are all very heavy fighters. So I think when it came to the sparring portion, they were just kind of picking and choosing, and let's put them against them. And like I felt like I sparred like 15 rounds.
Wow.
Or something like that. But it was pretty intense, and you definitely feel like you earned it. That's for sure.
Now you mentioned sparring. So at what belt level did you get involved in the competition side of martial arts? And was the school you trained at, was it more focused on competition, more traditional, or was it a nice blend?
So I was at the Jhoon Rhee in Marlow Heights, and this was, let's see. So Grandmaster Jhoon Rhee is originally taught the ITF Chung De Kwan system. Mm-hmm. Chunji, Tengun, Tosan, and Taekwondo. Right around somewhere in the early 80s, he had made his own system. He made it a modernized system, and he did this for a couple of reasons. One, he was doing a lot of collaboration with Bruce Lee. They were very close. They were good friends. Grandmaster Rhee taught Bruce Lee, Taekwondo kicks, and Bruce Lee said, "Hey, the stances might not work. Why don't you try standing up?" And they just traded a lot of ideas. So he'd kind of formulated his own curriculum, and we call it the modern Jhoon Rhee system now, where everything is kind of done upright, right? We teach the modern system first, and then after first degree, we go back and do the tradition. So
okay.
we teach the stances from first to second degree. And I think I was around purple belt when they made that switch. So
okay.
I was kind of learning half and half of the forms. But I do remember, I think my first competition was the U.S. Capital Classics. I was a purple belt, and I did a form, and it was so funny thing is, mm-hmm. the modern system is mostly upright stances.
Okay.
Dennis Brown's tournament, so he's a wushu stylist.
Yep.
So I'm sitting in the ring, and most of my judges were kung fu wushu. And so I did a Jhoon Rhee modern form, and I was so nervous. I did it so fast. I'm sure it was pretty bad in my eyes, but to them, it kind of looked like a wushu form, and I placed third. I was like, wow.
Nice.
That kind of amazed me. And that was like my first try at competition. I think as a brown belt, I did a lot of competitions in the area, just local tournaments. Mm-hmm. And then I got a little serious as a black belt.
Okay.
I met a lot of friends, and I got serious in competition as a black belt. I had a very rude awakening because I was placing quite well as an underbelt. But if you're a black belt and you go into a black belt competition, you're not in there with other black belts that have been black belts as long as you have. You're in there with black belts that may have been black belts for 5 or 6 years.
Yep.
Or could be second, third, fourth degrees. So I think my first, it must have been my first year or two, maybe even 2, that I would compete as a black belt. I wouldn't even place.
Wow.
And of course, that just drove me more. That drove me to training harder, and then I eventually got to the point where I started placing.
Okay.
right? And then I got sponsored by Team Atomics.
Nice. Great
They
shoes.
make yeah, shoes and
Yep.
pants and footwear. And then after Atomics, I got picked up by Team Prestige,
Okay.
and they were pretty well known on the NASCAR circuit. I had teammates like John Valera, he's a
Yep.
stuntman actor now. Don Terratata is an actor. Willie the Bam Johnson, everyone knows
Yep.
Bam.
Yeah. Willie was on my show. Yep.
Oh, was he?
Yep.
Yeah, he's a
Yep.
great guy. He was actually my roommate
Nice.
whenever we would
Okay.
travel. Hakeem Shaw Alston. So I finally got it to a team, and I think as a competitive martial artist, I think your big goal is to make it on a team, because
Hmm.
if you don't get on a team and you're competing nationally, that gets expensive.
Yeah. Yeah, I can
Right.
imagine. So now, were you doing strictly forms? Were you competing in sparring? Were you doing weapons? What were you competing in?
I was doing mostly forms.
Okay.
I think when you get to the level of black belt, it's kind of like you can be really good at one or okay at two,
Okay.
depending on the time that you had. And you'll notice that with a lot of martial artists, like John Valera was, he was a great fighter, but he was mostly a forms guy. Willie
Right.
the Bam Johnson, again, great forms guy, but mostly known for forms, but great in fighting. I was there, so I fought. I don't think I was the greatest. I wasn't nearly as good as people that only fought.
Right.
Like I had Ibi Abdallah was a teammate of mine, and Jay Bell was a teammate of mine, and their forms might have been so, but man, their fighting was amazing. So it's kind of like you choose,
Yeah.
right? You want to spend more of your time here or there, and then there's a rare few that did well everywhere, and that's rare. I mean, that's Kevin Thompson.
Oh, yeah.
He's a gentleman that
Recognize that
he
name.
was everywhere. Forms, fighting, and weapons. He was an amazing martial artist. Rest in peace.
Okay, yeah, I remember. God, one of the best one. One time I got to see Steve Nasty Anderson fight. So he was kind of fun to watch back in the day.
Yeah, Nasty was something else.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
good. So then, at what level did teaching become? Because obviously that's something you're still doing to this day. When did you decide that was something you wanted to do? Did you start assisting as a lower belt? Did that not happen until you were a black belt? When did that happen?
No, that it's kind of weird. I feel that I was kind of molded. I think my instructors saw the potential in me as an instructor. So yeah, I had a very interesting start to that. Like I started assisting as a brown belt with Master Coles, and he started kind of grooming me as an instructor, and even told me, like, once I get my black belt, then I can start teaching for him. And I got my black belt, and I was kind of an assistant instructor. He took me under his wing, and it really started. I wasn't a great instructor first, but it started to click after a while. And a couple of years go by, actually maybe a year goes by, and next thing you know, I'm the head instructor of his school. Like, he's the office manager. He appoints me the head instructor. They put more training into me, and so this is interesting because this all started when I was young. When I was about 16, I was the head instructor of Jhoon Rhee Heights.
Wow.
And then they were opening more locations, and they opened that school in Glendale, Jhoon Rhee Glendale. And at the time, Grandmaster Rhee owned all the schools, so he was kind of floating the instructors where they were needed. And the opportunity came for me to run a school in Glendale. So I met with Grandmaster Rhee's son, Jimmy Rhee. We talked about it, and they decided to put me in charge of a school. Now I'm 17.
Wow.
And so here I am. I'm still in high school. I'm running the Jhoon Rhee in Glendale. I'm signing contracts that I can't even really sign because I'm not even 18 yet. But I'm running a school, and it's great. I'm the manager, and it just started. It was started. So I didn't have a lot of students at first, but
Right.
I was like, wow, this is my school. I'm running the school. I'm the office manager. I'm teaching classes, and I really just loved kind of being in charge, being in control. And I was like, this is really cool. And at such a young age,
Mm-hmm.
I think it was just something I really wanted to do. Now, of course, I went to college, and I even taught all the way through college. I think it was like my junior year. In all my martial arts, I think I only took a break twice in my life. And I think once was when I was a junior in college because my courses got too heavy.
Okay.
And I couldn't teach full time and go to college. I was trying to go to med school. So I had to back out so I could concentrate on my studies. And then the other time was a little bit later on when I decided to try my hand at being a network engineer. I took a break for a couple of years.
So when you were 17 and went to your parents and said, "Hey, I'm going to be running my own martial arts school," I'm just curious, what was their reaction?
Well, not great, quite honestly.
I can't imagine.
Because so I'm Filipino, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like Asian parents, like it's all school, and like I said, my parents molded me to be a doctor, and they wanted me to be a doctor. And so at that point, it was like, well, I guess, but it's just kind of a waste of time. You should be spending your time studying. And then they're actually very upset when I was still teaching it and I was in college. It's like, well, you should quit that, because you need to concentrate on your studies. So it wasn't what I expected.
Okay.
It was and I guess thinking back, I did it and I kind of defied my parents by continuing to teach when they wanted me to concentrate on my studies.
That's crazy. So what do you, thinking back to that first time you started teaching as a brown belt to now, what do you think's changed about your teaching style over the years?
Oh, a lot. I was very dry. I was very monotone. I actually had taken the lead of one of my instructors, Jhoon Lee, and he was probably the toughest, meanest Korean I'd ever met. He was like 6 feet tall. He had a crew cut, and he never smiled. He never smiled. And when he would spar with students, like they would bleed.
Wow.
He was kind of like a real deal. And I was like, oh, I want to be like Master Lee. And so like I didn't smile. I had no expression, and I demanded a lot. And it was okay. The quality was fantastic, but there was no retention, because people weren't sticking around. And I was like, you know what? I think if I am more relatable, I think I would get better results. And so then I started teaching in the style of my other mentor, Michael Coles. He was he was very firm, but he was also very friendly and very accommodating. And so I kind of took that lead, and the students really just started they started to stick around. We could see things eye to eye, and I'm like, yeah, I think that's probably where I started my attitude of respect me for what I have to teach you, not for who I am, right? Like I didn't want to have that attitude of, I'm a black belt and I'm your instructor. You should bow and respect me because you're supposed to, right? I took the attitude of, we should have mutual respect, and you should respect what I teach, respect me for the teacher and what I'm teaching you, just like we should respect all teachers, right? And I wanted the respect to be earned from my students. And I think that's really what kind of turned things around for me as an instructor. And I think I really started to prove it when I became a co-owner of Jhoon Rhee Arlington.
Okay.
And I say that because I taught at a lot of schools, and I think the most time I ever spent at one school might have been like 4 or 5 years.
Okay.
And then I would either go to a different branch, or I'd help someone else or whatever. But once I stayed in one place and I had vested interest in the school, I could put all my energies in one place. We grew like gangbusters. Nice. I mean, we got to the point where we had 300 students, right? Wow. And to me, I think 300 students is a national average where if you have 300, you're successful, okay, right? But then we grew more, and then we ran out of space. So then we had to get a space in our mall down the hall, and then we grew again. Then we had to get more space down the hall. Eventually, at the end, we're 7,000 square feet, and we're at 625 students.
Nice.
And I'm like, wow. And my business partner, Barry Shackelford, we talk about that all the time. It's like when we grew up, I mean, he started martial arts in Danville in a very small school. And again, like I said, in my experience, 300's like the target. But we just, people wouldn't quit. People stuck around, they stayed, and I think a lot of it is not demanding respect, but earning it, and being practical and teaching things, and seeing people eye to eye, see them as people, not as your subjects or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And that really helped out. So
very cool. So what led to the decision to move to Arizona? Was that strictly martial arts based, or was it something completely different that led you there?
Two parts to that.
Okay.
So I had a student of mine. His name's Jeff Durbin, and he was he was one of my competitors. He was top ranked in NASCA, and he got recruited by Mike Erickson in Arizona, organization called America's Best Karate. And so he had the #1 school in Arizona, the #3 school in the country, according to EFC, because he had big schools, and they were very, very. I mean, they had koi ponds in them. I mean, he did a good job. And Mike Erickson is actually he's from Steve Oliver's lineage in Colorado. He kind of ran his schools and decided to open up in Arizona. He did his research, like he knew that Arizona was a good place to go. He and one of his students, Shannon Preston, kind of opened up there. Next thing you know, he's got 5 schools, and he recruits Jeff Durbin, one of my students. And then every time I talk to Jeff, Jeff's like, hey, Mr. Erickson really wants to meet you. He really wants to meet you. And I was like, oh, okay, I guess. I really didn't want to move to Arizona. And he had actually, Mike Erickson he wanted to convert his schools from a kind of a older Jhoon Rhee system, the Chung Kwan system, into he wanted to be official members of Jhoon Rhee Taekwondo. Okay. So in order to do that, he wanted to recruit me because I was a big part of the curriculum, and I could help convert the schools over. He wined and dined me. He invited me on to a cruise. He hosted seminars for me. I mean, he gave me, the red carpet treatment. And I still wasn't sure because I was really kind of locked into my life in DC. And, well, I had an ex-girlfriend, and things weren't going well. And it was very hard for me to separate from her. And I'm just gonna kind of leave it at that. And then I was thinking, you know what? Maybe I should give Arizona a try. And so that kind of helped separate me from that, but then also gave me another opportunity to run an organization. So anyway, Mike Erickson hired me. He made me the vice president of America's Best Karate, and I was there for 10 years, nearly 10 years.
Oh, was that long? Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
And then, so what led you back then?
So Erickson and I, we had kind of a bit of falling out. We didn't see a lot of things eye to eye. I was young enough, and I came to the decision that if I wanted to try something different in my life, now would be the time to do it. And I've always been good in computers. I mean, way back in the day, I was big. This is all pre-internet. Like I was writing BBSs. And nice. I was doing a lot of programming. Do you remember BBSs?
Oh yeah, I used to log into our local Elves Den BBS from my Commodore 64 and my 300 baud modem.
Okay, so exactly. So that was kind of my thing, and then then the computers came up, and I was a hobbyist, right? I was building the 8088s and the 386s, and I was so it was always a hobby. I was like, I wonder if I could make a career out of it. So I was kind of taking classes during the day while I was teaching at night. So I signed up at a networking school, a computer networking. I had like a trade school called Collins College in Arizona, and I blew it out the door. I mean, I graduated valedictorian, and before I even graduated, a Cisco company had hired me.
Wow.
So I was doing that. And I was doing great, learning a lot of advanced technologies. My boss told me that I was on a fast track. He said, 4 or 5 years, you're at a 6-figure income, you're doing a great job, and I'm getting all these certifications. And then I started to realize that I really miss teaching because I loved working with people, influencing them in the right direction, changing lives, all that stuff, right?
Hmm.
Trying to be an inspiration for everybody. And now I'm sitting at a desk and I'm fixing, some guy's router, and that's it, right? And I'm like, wow, I can go hours or even a day without even talking to another human being. I gained 40 pounds and I was not feeling fulfilled. I was like, you know what? The money might be great, but this is not fulfilling one bit. I think I need to get back into martial arts. And
Nice.
and right about then, my father had gotten sick. He actually he had 3 strokes,
Oh,
but
wow.
the last stroke had really kind of got him hard. And I just said, hey, I need to take care of my dad. I need to move back home. So in '06, around there, I moved back, and then my father passed the next year, and then I got back into teaching.
Wow.
I mean, I had gained so much weight, and I think like I had so much sugar in my blood that I had to wear glasses. Like the optometrist explained that, yeah, when you have a lot of sugar in your blood, like you get like this kind of glaucoma. I was wearing glasses, and I was like, oh, I was, hypertension. Like I was in the wrong place where I definitely didn't want to be. So when I moved back, yeah, I got back into it. I hooked up with Grandmaster Yi's son, Jhoon Rhee. He kind of had me as like a fix-it guy.
Hmm.
He had owned a couple schools. He said, hey, I need you to go to this school, this school, this school, teach here, help, fix them up a little bit, sharpen them up. And then I had the opportunity to get Arlington.
And what year did that? How long have you been at the Arlington School now?
We've been there 17 years.
Wow, that's
Yeah,
awesome.
17 years. Yeah, I had plans to open a school in Merrifield, Virginia. And so while I was waiting for that school to be built or for it to be available, I was teaching at other schools. And then Chun Ree's cousin, Barry Shackelford, had opened up Arlington. And Barry had taught at Jhoon Rhee Georgetown for a while. He's actually a black belt under Charlie Lee from Virginia Tech.
Oh yeah.
And he had run, but he'd never really run a school. I don't think he taught a lot of kids. You don't really teach a lot of kids in Junior Georgetown.
Hmm.
So Chun asked if I could just stay there and kind of help get Barry established. So I kind of taught him some of the systems I knew, and he was a very quick learn. But I taught him like the systems to run a school. I taught him how I teach like 4-year-olds and all that good stuff. And my school in Merrifield, that lease had fallen through because of zoning. It was only zoned to be a restaurant, like or in food service. I'm like,
Oh,
oh,
okay.
well, that sucks. I can't do like junior taekwondo and carry out. So,
Hmm.
so I was going to look for another location, and Barry and I get along great. And he said, hey, he said, before you go looking for another place or before you sign a lease or anything, let's talk, right? And so we decided to be partners at that point,
Very cool.
which is great because I think when I tell people all the time, we have it's well, pre-pandemic, it's
Hmm.
still getting back up there, but I could not have gotten a 600 student school by myself.
Right.
There's no way. And that's probably the one time that I'd gone against most business advice. They say, never go into business with a partner. But in this case, I think it was kind of the perfect storm.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So and then what now was it once you took over Arlington that you started having your students have a lot of success nationally, or did you have success before that?
Oh no, yeah, that was kind of all along. I think,
Okay.
I think that started when I was at Glendale,
Okay.
right? That school that I ran, and I think the start of all that was Carmichael.
Okay.
Carmichael lived in Annapolis, but he was at a Taekwondo school, and he was kind of self-taught. Charlie Lee had actually kind of taken him under his wing and taught him kind of the ways of open style forms, junior style
Hmm.
forms. And Charlie, of course, was very busy. And his instructor kind of said, there isn't a lot I can teach you anymore. you should seek out, like a Jhoon Rhee school. And I just happened to be right there in Glendale. And so he had signed up, and well, he didn't sign up. He just came to me for competition. And so we would meet like every week. We'd meet every weekend. We'd get together, and I would train him competition wise, and I'd straighten up the stances. I cleaned up the kicks. I did everything like the Jhoon Rhee way. The quote unquote Jhoon Rhee way. This is the legacy of John Chung and Charlie Lee. And of course, he's tearing up the NASCA circuit, and then people are like, "Hey, who's your instructor?" And then that I think that started the whole snowball effect, because then people, started coming to me, "Hey, can you train my kid?" And next thing you know, I've got kids like Ashley Lane I met, and she's her parents are driving her up from South Carolina like twice a month. I've got students driving over from Pennsylvania, once or twice a month. I had one kid from Canada that was trying to come from Winnipeg, that was trying to come like, once a month.
Winnipeg. Geez, that's 3 hours north of me.
Yeah,
crazy.
Right. Yeah. And so it was all kind of, I think Carmichael was it. It's kind of like, who taught you? And then and then they started doing well. Like, who taught you? And they started doing well, right? And so the whole irony of it all, is that I trained some great martial artists, but myself, I was I don't know, top 10 maybe. Yeah. Good enough to be on, to be sponsored and on a team, but not like a superstar. And it's kind of like that old adage, right? Those that can't do teach, right? So I tried, but I think that's where I think I'm a teacher, where I'm an instructor, because I think I just put all my energy into them. I didn't put as much energy into myself, and I'm okay with that. But one thing that I tell my students all the time, I ask them about their goals. I said, "What is your goal? What is your goal in Taekwondo?" And they say, "Well, I want to be a black belt." I was like, "Fantastic. That is a great goal." And some would say, "I want to be a teacher." I was like, "An instructor." I was like, "Good. That's a good goal too." Yep. And some of them say, so I want to be a competitor, this or that. I was like, "That's great." I was like, "What's my goal? What's my goal as your instructor?" And I'm like, "To get us to black belt." I was like, "Nope." I was like, "Really?" I was like, "It's better. It's bigger than that." I was like, "What? Well, what's your goal?" And I say, "My goal is to make you better than me." Nice. Right? That's good. And that's how any system, any style perpetuates, right? I mean, there are some styles where like only the master is the best one. Yeah. Right. Well, then what's going to happen? It's going to die out, right? If you set that goal to make your students better than you, then you know that you're leaving a fantastic legacy behind. And the students, they feel great about it. And you know what? They've gotten better than me.
Well, it's good. It works. And
it works.
I'm so glad you mentioned Ashley Lane. I've told so many people about her. I think it was my first or second ever Diamond Nationals. I think she was either 9 or 10 and did her bow staff competition to the song Kung Fu Fighting. That was so cool. I still have it on VHS somewhere.
You and I think, because you traveled the NASCA circuit.
I only went to the Diamond Nationals. I was never a competitor. I went as a fan. I mean, I was a martial artist, but I was never into competition. My friend competed at the Diamond Nationals, and he got me to go watch him one time, and I'm like, "Oh, I'm coming to this every year. This is fun."
Yeah, you and I were at the same place at the same time a few times, because 9 is actually when I started teaching Ashley.
Okay.
Yeah, I started teaching Ashley 9. She is known for that white bow staff. Yep. And she would do the circular kicks, and all that stuff. But yeah, I started training her, and I cleaned her forms up. I gave her some different moves to do, some different combinations, and she became she's still very active now.
Is she?
She's in. Well, she had taught. Let's see. She had moved to Atlanta, and she taught with Joe Corley's organization for a little bit. Gosh, had a few kids, but she's always, she and I are still in touch, and she's always posting videos of her competing as recently as like maybe 2 years ago.
Oh, wow.
But now her kids are
Hmm.
like doing fantastic on the circuit. I mean, they're great fighters.
I'd love to have her on the show. just
Oh,
just because I first watched her way back then. I mean, that'd be so cool. I mean, yeah,
she is an amazing young lady. I'll give you her info.
that's cool. I'd appreciate it. That'd be awesome. Like I said,
Sure.
I think my first Diamond Nationals that I watched as a fan, I think was 1990, and then
Uh-huh.
I think I went 5 years in a row. I wasn't there in
Uh-huh.
90. I wasn't there in 96 because
Uh-huh.
I moved to California then to train in American Kempo, and then I came back and I
Uh-huh.
think I went in probably 97, 98, 99, and I don't think I've gone
Hmm.
since probably 2000. It's been a while.
So yeah, I think like the early to mid 90s was when I was in my heyday of competition,
Okay.
of training competitors, because so when you were there, the three big juniors were Carmichael Simon,
Hmm.
Mike Chatteranabut, and
Yep.
John Valera.
Yep. Oh
And
yeah.
yeah, those three were at it, and they would kind of go back and forth with winning the grands and stuff like that. And that's kind of when I had a lot of my competitors out there. And actually, Dennis Brown, he's the promoter of the U.S. Capital Classics.
Hmm.
I mean, he pointed it out to me because kids would come up and they do the presentation, judges representing blah blah blah, and then my instructor Francis Pineda, and then the other one, my instructor Francis Pineda, and then Dennis Brown was like, "How many of these kids you got out there?" Because they're winning the divisions. They were doing a great job. But yeah, I would say the early mid '90s is when I had my biggest flock of competitors on the circuit. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I've had a handful of NASCA people on my show, and
Yeah.
I had Casey Marks on my show.
Oh, she's great.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she was fun. I remember watching her when I was younger and stuff. So I had her on the show. I'm trying to think of a few of the other ones. I haven't had Larry Carnahan yet. I've been talking to him, but I haven't
Oh,
had
he's a good guy.
yeah, I haven't had Larry on
Uh-huh.
the show yet. But yeah,
Hmm.
it's been cool. I think Carmichael, I think was probably my first NASCA person I had, and then
Uh-huh.
and then I think Casey was like 6 episodes later, and
Uh-huh.
I had Cynthia Rothrock was on the show,
Oh,
who's
I did some work with Cynthia. Yeah.
yeah, old school, and Cynthia, Christine Bannon Rodriguez has been on the show. They
Yep.
said Willie Bam Johnson has been on the show. So yeah,
Yeah.
people like that. So I've been lucky. It's been a current a current NASCA competitor, 16-year-old Samantha Mittling. I don't know if you've heard of her or not.
Hmm. Hmm.
Amazing with bow staff, just an amazing young lady. It was just such a good
Yeah.
interview. I'd listen to the interview and I'm like, I can't believe she's 16 years old. Just an amazing, well-spoken person,
Yeah.
and just shows you what martial arts can do. Also, just like
Oh
so
my
cool.
goodness. Oh my goodness. As an instructor, I have such amazing teams, and they've come back to me from college and thanked me. They're like, Master Pineda, I want to thank you so much because, outside of the kicks and the punches, like you sent me into the real world with confidence and self-esteem. And I was
Nice.
like, wow. I was like, my work is done.
There you go. That's the important part. So
And that's kind of my one of my selling points too, because that's what I want to do. It's like I want to send your child to college or into the real world with the tools that they're going to need to get by. The tools that you can't really learn many other places.
there we go.
Right?
All right, got to kind of take a weird left turn here. I got to know what led to the video game, The Untouchable,
Oh,
and your involvement with that.
let's see. Travis Riggs had a company, Creative Edge Software, and he had, let's see, how did that happen? One of my students was involved,
Okay.
Mallory Woods. And Mallory himself is a very accomplished. Mallory, it's weird. Mallory and I know each other pre-martial arts. We know each other from the BBS days, from computers.
Nice.
Like we were in high school, we would trade games and stuff like that.
Mhm.
When I opened my school in Glendale, he was going to Bowie State University, which was like 2 miles away, and he was a student of mine. And so I'd taken him for a while, and I think when I had to quit, like I said, to go to med school, he had hooked up with Gerald Dawson up in Baltimore, became a very accomplished fighter, and Mallory ended up becoming one of the best fighters in the country. Still very active, actually. He's doing a lot of commentating for tournaments and stuff like that
Nice.
now.
Okay.
But somehow I found he had gotten involved with this video game project. He might have been a personal friend of Travis's. And I was like, oh man, I need to get involved. And I sent Travis like all these pictures of myself, and he and I met. And I think he had realized that not only was I a decent martial artist, but I also had connections to a lot of other real martial artists because he wanted to make a martial arts game.
Yeah.
So I had introduced him to like everyone else. Like I think well, Carmichael for one, Carmichael
Yep.
Simon, Jeff Durbin, a couple of my students at the time because I was at Jhoon Rhee in Georgetown.
John Valera was in that one. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
John Valera. So I actually, in addition to being a character, he also hired me as his choreographer. So I'd done a lot of the choreography also.
Nice.
And then he did the sequel, which was bigger and actually still not released. And that's where I met Cynthia Rothrock. I did a lot of her choreography and stuff like that. And Larry Lamb also was a part of that project too. And he's an amazing martial artist, let me tell you.
That is cool.
But yeah, that's kind of it. And so so Travis is based on my side. He's in Sterling, so he wasn't even that far.
Okay.
And we had just become really good friends. We used to do this thing. He had worked at a TV and radio production studio in Virginia,
Mm-hmm.
and he used to do this thing. It was so cool. He called it Pirate Radio. And what would happen is that when the radio station went off the air, he would have his own pirate radio.
Yep.
And it was great because we'd drive over there, and he even had listeners calling in at like 2:00 in the morning. But it was cool. Like he played disco, and it was like a big talk show, and I mean, I'm sure you had fun with that with your experience in radio.
I'm just
yeah,
saying,
Travis.
I started in radio when I was 15, and the station I worked at went off the air at midnight. And I'm not going to say that I did that, but it does sound familiar.
You know exactly what I'm talking about.
Definitely.
And that was a lot of fun. But yeah, Travis and I have been really good friends, and I'm still working with him on a couple projects. But I'd introduce him to a lot of martial artists and other people too. But that's kind of how that whole came about.
And then did I also read, was there a movie you got involved in too?
Ooh.
I do my research.
So I have an IMDb for the video game and also a movie called
Leather and Iron.
Leather and Iron. I think it had actually changed names a couple times. I think it's actually called Screaming Metal.
I was going to say, on IMDb, so it's Leather and Iron on IMDb, but then they show the picture of the movie and it's Screaming Metal. So
yeah,
okay.
Screaming Metal. And that was a weird project. I'm even trying to remember I think they had tryout. This is when I was in Arizona.
Okay.
And they had some kind of tryouts, and I don't know, it could have just been someone that I knew that got me involved in the project. But I played the right hand man. It was a war between Asian gangsters and a biker gang.
Okay.
I'll be honest with you. I haven't even seen the movie.
Now I have I have a mission to see it now because I just so here's the tagline from in my best movie trailer voice: an action-laced thriller that uses genuine outlaw bikers to weave its gritty tale of drug, sex, kidnapping, and chopper thug violence.
There you go.
That just sounds cool. Now I got to find this movie now.
Well. All right. If you really want to get it, I think it's on Amazon.
Okay, I might have to check it out.
But again, and actually, I have the DVD that I had gotten from Netflix back when Netflix had DVDs.
Oh wow!
And I just purchased it from them, just to have, because like I said, like I couldn't sit through the movie; it was so bad. But I played the right hand man to the gang boss on the Asian side.
Okay.
And I think I have a still or two of me like standing next to him. And oh boy, I'm glad I never got into acting, or at least B-rated movie acting, because it was pretty bad. But we had, this was when I was with, I was in Arizona. I had a bunch of really talented students. Jeff Durbin was one of them. And we actually had a whole bunch of fight scenes that we had choreographed, and we did all this stuff. None of it was used.
Oh, man.
A lot of it ended up on the cutting room floor. Actually, it didn't even get filmed, right?
Oh, wow.
Because we had all the choreography done, but it was never even filmed. So anyway, there's a couple scenes of me in it, and my wife keeps saying, "Oh, we should watch." I was like, "No, we don't want to watch it." I was like, I can't. I might have a little bit of spare time, but I don't think I have 90 minutes to put to that movie.
Well, if I can find a stream online, I'll post it in the show notes. That's for sure.
Great.
We'll have to see. That'll be awesome. Maybe I'll find a DVD somewhere and send it to you and have you sign it.
Oh boy,
that's awesome. All right, so enough of that. But what is some advice you would give to someone? Someone approaches you; they've never done martial arts in their life, and they're just wondering, saying, "Hey, I want to get involved. What should I look for? Or what should I avoid?"
I've become pretty good friends with this guy Rob. He has a podcast and an Instagram site. He does live feeds. He runs a site called McDojo Life.
Okay. And
McDojo Life is dedicated to pretty much keeping martial arts real, right? It's kind of like these are, a McDojo is kind of a term, they just spit them out like McDonald's, like black belts. They just spit out black. You pay your tuition on time, you'll get a black belt, right? You drink the Kool-Aid, you'll get a black belt. And I love this guy's site because he's doing a great job of just exposing people. Because the thing with a martial arts school is that there's no governing body, international governing body. There's no set of standards. Any hoo-ha with a black belt thinks that they can open a school and teach, right? And so again, since there's no sort of quality control, you have no idea what you're getting. You could go to Billy Bob's karate school and as a layman get sucked into thinking the stuff that you're learning is real and it works. I would say, for one, do your research. I would say pick an organization be a part of an organization with history, right? And that's something like Jhoon Rhee Taekwondo, for one. Mm-hmm. And a lot of bigger names. But even at that, right, an organization is one thing, but you still have to look deeper into the school, into the instructor, right? Because just because you own a school with a good name on it doesn't necessarily mean you're a great instructor. And I have a lot of students that move, because we're in Arlington, a lot of State Department people, they'll move and I'll try to help place them in martial arts schools to wherever they're going. And part of my advice is, one, take a look at their black belt class. Look at the size of their black belt class, because these are people that believe in the school and have decided to stick around, right? Mm-hmm. I think some martial artists will get to the point where they're like, oh man, like this school is no good, but I've invested so much time in it. As soon as I get my black belt, I'm out, right? So for them, black belt is the last step. Mm-hmm. A school that's got a decent sized black belt class has students that are happy with where they are, and they don't see black belt as the last step. They see it as the first step. Right. And I think that's one of my biggest. Look there, right? Okay. And observe and watch, see how the teachers are, see how the instructors are. That's just really as far as kind of quality of the school. Mm-hmm. And then, the other thing you got to look out for is the business ethics of some schools.
Right.
Because, I met one woman and she had a school and, let's see, she was on her way to court because she was suing a student that decided to default on their payments. Oh, wow. And she said, well, they signed a contract. It's like a car. If you can't just not pay your car. It's like, yeah, but that's a car. Yeah. And lessons can start out great, mm-hmm. but then they can turn bad. The quality of what's going on changes by the day. There are some schools where they put the best instructors at white and gold belt, mm-hmm. just to kind of lure them in, get them to sign the big contracts. Then after that, they're like, whatever, you're on your own. And if they quit, they quit, but they signed a contract or they paid in full.
Right.
The business ethics, I think, are very important. We have I keep it easy. You can pay in full for a year and do that if you're really committed and you really think this is something you can do. But I don't do like some schools will do 3 years or 2 years. That's it. You can pay in full for 1 year, or you go month to month, and this can be canceled at any time with 30 days written notice.
Nice.
Anytime for any reason, right?
That's cool.
And that's just it, right? That makes me accountable. I have to teach good classes or they'll quit, right? Another thing too is how'd you hear about them, right? When I have whenever I'm signing a person up, I was like, oh, how'd you hear about us? And I would say probably a solid 85 to 90% heard it, sign up because they heard it from someone else.
Right.
And I said, fantastic. Word of mouth, right? I would much rather, if I want something, a service or whatever, I would much rather take word of mouth from someone that I trust, a friend of mine, right? And I say, you know what? We have a quarter-page ad in the local newspaper, and we just have that just so people know we're here. But most of the people sign up word of mouth.
Nice.
And again, that keeps me on my toes, because if you don't like my classes, you're not going to recommend me to other people.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, how do you explain that to someone that's never, been exposed to martial arts before, right? Because that's where the marketing comes into play,
right?
Because there are so many marketing companies out there, and they'll make guarantees like, I guarantee you'll get 30 signups a month and this and that, and the marketing is heavy, like get him in the door. There was one organization in the area, I'm not going to name them because I don't like to talk bad about a lot of people, but they actually hired managers from the local fitness clubs.
Oh, geez.
Because they were closers. If you were in the door, they will close you. And they weren't even black belts, but they wore a belt around their waist that was black, and it had a stripe in the middle, right? A white, a gold. And I found out later on from someone that had left that organization that a black belt with a green stripe through the middle was the highest you could be, because you close X number of dollars a month. So like green like money. I'm like, oh my God, that's horrible.
Sad. Wow.
It's sad. I know it is sad. And again, that's the McDojo, right? They don't care about keeping you, about retention. They just want to get you in the door. The marketing, I mean, we're talking like flyers on the doors, cold calls, warm calls, all that stuff, and those are all big red flags, but that's hard for me to tell a layman what to look out for, without kind of sounding like I'm promoting myself. I just say, you know what, sit in my lobby, watch my classes, take a month of classes, and if you like them, great, I'll sign you up. If not, we can still be friends. We can part ways.
Very cool.
I can even recommend you to another school if you're interested in a different style. Like if Taekwondo is not your thing, or if you want to do WT, I got a great friend down the street there. If you want to do Jiu-Jitsu, I got a great friend down there. I'm in it to make a living and to make money, but I think customer service is important too, right?
Nice. That's right. It's a great attitude to have. So
yeah.
All right. So what are your thoughts on MMA and the UFC, and are you a fan?
Ooh. Yes and no.
Okay.
Right. As a martial artist that teaches a way of life and life skills, I think they're bad role models, a lot of the fighters, right? There's no respect. They don't bow in the ring, right? They don't bow. They talk trash about each other. It's in the news all the time. They're on drugs, or they're dating prostitutes or whatever. I think they're bad role models, and I would hesitate to say martial arts, at least in the way I see martial arts, right? But as a sport, I think they're phenomenal athletes.
Yeah,
they train a lot. They train a ton, and every once in a while you'll find a rare blend of someone that is at heart a martial artist, but also trains and shows respect. And I'll call him out. His name is Ryan Hall. Yep. Ryan Hall's a good guy. He's got a jiu-jitsu school down the street. I've referred people to his school. He has a UFC contract. He is the nicest, most humble guy. I mean, he calls me sir, and he doesn't have to,
Nice.
And I've taken classes at his place before. He, in my eyes, he is a martial artist and an athlete. Right? A majority of them, again, they're great athletes. you think about martial arts in different ways, like, some of the traditional styles will say, it's only for defense, but here's one guy, beating the other guy to a bloody pulp, And then you think, well, in order to beat some guy to a bloody pulp and into submission, you got to do a lot of training. You have to be very, you have to know a lot of stuff. And, it's kind of like, Bruce Lee, I think a lot of people would agree, but some would disagree. I think Bruce Lee was the father of mixed martial arts, because he took, he learned, Kung Fu, Wing Chun, but then he wanted to expand. He made Jeet Kune Do. He absorbed what is useful. He encompassed all. He moved to the more practical, right? And that's kind of what MMA did, right? I mean, what the UFC did, they said, well, this doesn't work, try that. I was like, well, you got to have a good ground game, but now you have to have a good game on your feet. You have to have, the offensive, the defensive, all. So I am a fan of the UFC. I have people that I know in the UFC. I have friends of mine that train athletes in the UFC. I respect them as athletes. I respect them as warriors, just like I'm a fan of boxing, right? I put it more in that category, right? I'm a big fan of boxing also. Cool. But when it comes to martial arts, then that's where I hesitate, right? That's where, the respect's not there. Leading by example to me is big, as a martial artist, as a leader to other people, knowing that people look up to you, you have to lead by example. And if you're, you got a drug problem, you're shooting up steroids, that's not there, right?
Right. No, that's good. That's a good answer. And I think a lot of, traditional martial artists would agree with you. So that's good. So who are some names, and it doesn't necessarily have to be 4, it can be, but who are some names that you would put on your personal Mount Rushmore of martial arts?
Wow. Well, Grandmaster Jhoon Rhee for one.
Right.
He is the man. Personally, he has given me everything I have. It's because of him that I have my lifestyle, my livelihood. I met my wife. I owe everything that I am to him. Nice. So he is at the head, right? As far as the rest, I would put those that have inspired me the most. My instructor, Michael Coles. He really shaped and molded me as an instructor. He really did. And he was very accomplished himself. He was a welterweight kickboxing champion. I think it was like 1978 to 1980. He's up there. And then just who I respect in general as in martial arts, Bruce Lee. I think he's got to be up there for sure.
That's some good ones.
Yeah. Bruce Lee, and I'm gonna keep it simple.
Okay.
I'm gonna keep it there. Keep it there because I have a lot that I owe a lot to, and I don't want to, but I would say those 3 are my inspiration, and I owe to who I am personally. And especially when it comes to Bruce Lee and Grandmaster Jhoon Rhee, I mean, in the world of martial arts, I think the world of martial arts would be different without them, for sure.
Definitely. I would agree with that.
Yeah.
So, all right. And I know before we started recording, you talked a little bit about Jhoon Rhee and some of his philosophies. So is there a couple, maybe 1 or 2 philosophies you've learned, whether it was from him or just anywhere else throughout your martial arts journey, that are just super important to you? You keep coming back to them. You try to use them in your everyday life. You still teach them to your own students.
Oh yeah. I mean, he I'll send you a copy of his book. He had come up with a philosophy he called Truthopia. Right, where the purpose of life is to be happy, and a lot of this is done through truth, beauty, and love. And he had talked about different ways of how martial arts is, how can you make martial arts a philosophy? Like his big thing is the 7 qualities of a champion. Because he would always say that martial arts without philosophy is street fighting. And so how can we relate martial arts into philosophy? So the 7 qualities are speed, timing, punctuality, endurance, balance, flexibility, posture. And how does that reflect on your everyday life? Well, speed, alertness. right? Being aware of your surroundings. Timing, punctuality, right? To be punctual. Endurance, perseverance, balance, rationality, flexibility, generosity, and posture, honesty. And a lot of his philosophy centers around those 7 qualities, and he explains them deeply, but not just in life, but he also relates them to the working world, to the business sense.
Okay.
Right. Like timing would be like market awareness, things like that. So he had taken these 7 qualities of a champion, and he wanted to him, it was very important that the life skills, that the philosophy was in place, because just like he said, without philosophy, martial arts is just street fighting. And, my big thing is that life skills are half of being in martial arts. I say, yes, you're in Taekwondo because you want to learn how to kick, how to punch, how to defend yourself. But, we want to teach you life skills that are going to help you outside of Taekwondo, to succeed in college. Or one thing that I say 2 big points, and this is to my kids that are going to college. Statistically, 2 big extracurricular points that will help you get into college, like statistically, are Eagle Scout and black belt in martial arts, right? And then I say, so I don't know, what do you think? Does Virginia Tech care that you know how to do a good side kick, or that Exodus, or that you have, that you can kick over your head? No, they don't care. I mean, but what they do care, and even if they're not a martial artist, is they know that you're a black belt. And getting a black belt, they know, is not impossible, but it's not easy. And it's a long-term goal. Virginia Tech wants to know that you are capable of setting your mind to a long-term goal and accomplishing that goal. The life skills that are going to help you in college aren't going to be your push-ups. It's not going to be, your super awesome, round kick. It's going to be the self-discipline, the focus, the feeling of self-worth, the self-esteem, right? The ability to set your goals, right? That's what's going to help you in school. That's what's going to help you in life.
I put it on my job resumes still. I mean, I've had,
yes,
and it's come up in every interview. People are like, why would you put that on there? I'm like, because it comes up in every interview. It gets asked about.
That's exactly it.
Important.
That's exactly it. And I tell them that too. I was like, you're going to put that, you put that on your college application, you put that on your job application, right? Because they know, again, even if they're not a martial artist, they know that you have the ability to accomplish a difficult goal, a long-term difficult goal. That's what they want, right? In the converse, I say, hey, would you ever want to put down that you're a brown belt? It's like, no. It's like, that would hurt your chances. That's saying, well, I started something and I quit. It's like, you're better off not putting anything down there. But yeah, Grandmaster Rhee, later on in later life, he really put a lot of focus and energy into his philosophy, because he really wanted to improve, the person, and help them outside of martial arts. I think he used martial arts as a vessel to teach them life skills and to teach them part of his philosophy.
Nice. All right. I have a few fun questions to wrap it up here. So this one, favorite martial arts book?
Ooh, interesting. Because over the summer, I encourage my students to read.
Okay.
And I say, reading's important because, it helps the imagination. It helps your cognitive ability. And so I always ask them, so what book are you reading? What book are you reading? And actually, my adult class came back to me and said, do you have a list that you could recommend to us? I was like, oh, wow. So I probably read the Tao of Jeet Kune Do until the bridge fell apart, right? That's a great book, right? I'm also big on The Art of War, Sun Tzu, and the Book of the Five Rings.
Nice.
Are probably my top 3.
Okay.
My top 3, yeah.
And anytime I talk to a Taekwondo stylist, I always have to ask, have you read the book, The Killing Art?
I have.
Okay.
I have. That was actually a gift to me. Someone gave that to me as a gift. I think at like my second or third degree test. Yeah. Yeah, good one.
Yeah, my instructor recommended that to me, and I read it in a weekend. So it was another.
Yeah.
I used to read. I used to read a book a week, and I want to get back to that. I haven't done that in a couple of years, but
yeah,
I love reading.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Well, you have kids, so.
Yeah, I know. Cool.
Look, got to find the time.
That is true. All right, this one, since you kind of grew up in the '80s like me, so I'm hoping you have a good answer for this. Favorite martial arts video game. And obviously you can't pick The Untouchable because you were in it.
Well, that was in the 90s. That was in the 90s.
Okay. It doesn't have to be in the 80s, just it can be any from any decade, but I don't know. There was a lot of good ones that came out in the 80s and 90s. So
well, I'll tell you what, I think it's got to be Mortal Kombat.
Nice.
For a couple of reasons, right? So that's the original, and this is one reason is because I know pretty much all the characters in it.
Yeah.
I had met Philip On. He was doing an autograph signing at a tournament one time, and he played the character Shang Tsung. Mm-hmm. And he signed my paper, and it was signed Dr. Philip On, MD. I was like, "You're a doctor?" And from that point forward, I had to talk to him because I was trying to get into med school, remember? And I was like, hey, "You got to help me out." And he and I became such fantastic friends. He flew me out to Chicago. Introduced me to the rest of the cast, which I got to know pretty well also. So that's probably one of the big reasons why I'm a big Mortal Kombat fan. And he actually wrote a book called The Mortal, I have it, I read it, but like The Mortal Doctor or something like that. And he kind of told his story as an immigrant from Korea growing up in Chicago. But also, Mortal Kombat, at the time, had good martial arts. Like it had real people. It had moves, things that I could relate to. But then, of course, I was a kid and I got sucked in by like the gore. like finish him. I was like, oh, what's that? Left, right, up, down. How do you do that? It was a different game. I don't think there were any other games like that at that time, and it just kind of sucked me in, and it became even better when I met the characters that played it.
Nice. How about a favorite martial arts TV show?
Oh, like a series?
Yeah. I mean, something like the Kung Fu, Cobra Kai, Walker Texas Ranger. I mean, anything like any TV series that strongly featured martial arts.
I think influentially, if that's a word, David Carradine's Kung Fu had a big part of me signing up for martial arts.
Okay.
Because it was a great story. I liked watching. Now, in retrospect, the martial arts was horrible, right? Like David Carradine was like he was only taking Tai Chi, right? And it was all camera work and the acting, but it was like the allure of like the blind master and walking the paper and like, wow, this is cool. So it drew me in. It definitely drew me in.
Yep.
And so I would say that's actually one of the things that really pushed me interest-wise into martial arts. I did enjoy watching the WMAC Masters series. Yep. And again, this was mostly because I knew everyone. Mm-hmm. Like I knew, every single person on that show, Carmichael included.
Yeah. Yep. I've had quite a few of them on my show too. And the gentleman who just wrote the book about it was on my show too, Chris Landis.
Oh, yeah. Chris Landis. Yeah. Yep. And that was it. And yeah, Cobra Kai is so bad.
But I love it.
And if you want, I can talk about that. But
it's bad, but I love it. It's cheesy. It's nostalgic. It's fun.
I talk about it. I watch it because my 9-year-old likes to watch it.
Yeah.
Right. But I'm so torn because like I said, I'm kind of big into martial arts being examples and this and that. And
right.
I don't know. Like my son's watching this. He's 9, and then here's Johnny drinking Coors every chance he gets. He's throwing out the P word like it's going out of style.
Yep.
And I'm like, what's your demographic? Right? Are you trying to go young or trying to go old? Like I couldn't quite get it, right? And I was actually joking, and I was like, well, all they do is they fight. They go to the mall, they fight. They go to the pool, they fight. I was like, what do they win? I was like, I think the winner should get acting lessons. Yeah, it's cheesy.
It is.
I watch, and plus, and I watch it because my 9-year-old wants to watch it. I also, because I have teenage students that watch it, so I can kind of relate to them. But it's pretty bad. I love the nostalgia of them bringing Karate Kid back. I think they should have stopped at season 1. Actually, I would have been happy.
Yeah, I don't know. There's still people I'm hoping they'll still bring back. So I mean, I watched season 5 this past week with my daughter, and I'm already hoping they'll do seasons. I know when they initially planned it, the writers had planned enough for 6 to 7 seasons. So they're hoping to get at least 6, hopefully 7 to finish the story. So,
and I'm sure you picked this up, right? Because we watched season 5 and we actually stopped right at the finale. But I'm watching the last few episodes and I'm thinking to myself, I think they're getting lazy because, here we are, martial arts from Okinawa, and I'm watching. I was like, that's Korean. That word's Korean.
I know, Dojang.
That's Korean. That's also Korean. Exactly.
Yep.
Like that. I was like, I think they're getting lazy. I was like, is there no one checking this? But,
I don't think so.
But yeah, Karate Kid. The original movie Karate Kid was, to the martial arts industry, a big boomer, right?
Yeah.
So there are things that really spiked the martial arts industry. Karate Kid, definitely.
Yeah.
That was a big one, right? Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was probably the next one.
Yep.
Right? And so, I was so into Karate Kid 1 and 2, and I think I watched the rest. I just forgot them because they were so bad. But I do love, I love seeing like Elizabeth Shue pop up and all the older characters. So that it's fun. It's fun. What I have to do is I have to not watch it as a martial artist.
Exactly.
And then it becomes more tolerable.
So you mean you can't get a black belt in 5 months and win a tournament? I mean, come on.
Exactly. Right. The All Valley, right?
That's the part that's always bothered me. That's the one thing. Like, come on, seriously.
Right.
That's the bad. That's the bad part. Is it makes people think, oh, it's that easy. No, it's not. It's a movie.
Exactly.
But I mean, all my listeners know Karate Kid is the reason I got involved in martial arts. I've told the story so many times. We went opening weekend, and local Tung Sudo school was standing out in the lobby when we came out of the movie, handing out free passes. Like June of '84. I was like, here's a free month of Tung Sudo lessons. Like, sweet, I'm joining karate. So great marketing, and it worked. So, all right, final question: favorite martial arts movie?
Ooh, I hesitate.
And maybe it's a guilty, maybe it's a guilty pleasure, something.
Because it was my favorite then.
Okay.
And then looking back, I'm like, it was hard. I loved Bloodsport.
Oh, it's so good. So good.
Yeah, I think before like my black belt test, I must have watched Bloodsport like 10 times straight through.
Nice.
I would definitely call that a guilty pleasure.
You're not the first one to pick it, so I mean, come on.
Really?
No.
Wow.
At least one or two other guests have picked. I think the two biggest ones are usually Karate Kid and Enter the Dragon.
Yeah.
But I've had random ones, but at least two people have picked Bloodsport. So.
Yep. That Bloodsport I enjoyed a lot. I really liked Best of the Best.
Yes.
That really kind of Philip and Simon Rhee. I mean, I think they did a great job of really opening up Taekwondo.
Yes.
Because I mean, I think it was done well. Like I think it even holds up pretty well.
Oh, I still watch it. I literally just watched it. Well, I watched it again about a month ago because I interviewed Simon Rhee on the show. So I wanted to.
Really?
I wanted to watch it again.
Oh, I'm gonna have to listen to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. But yeah, Bloodsport's my guilty pleasure. Best of the Best, I think. Realistically, Best of the Best was also a good one. But yeah, Enter the Dragon. I mean, that was it.
Yeah, no. For me, it's usually the Karate Kid's always my go-to, and then Best of the Best, Bloodsport, Enter the Dragon, and I also Perfect Weapon and Only the Strong. Those are like my top 5 or 6 that I rewatch those all the time.
Yeah. Only Strong is good too.
Yeah,
it is.
Oh yeah. Mark DeCosco is phenomenal.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, martial arts movies, and here's my take on. I don't watch a lot of martial arts movies anymore. Right. I think I'm too much of a critic for one.
Yep.
But it's weird, because I know like Don the Dragon Wilson. I've gone to Korea with him before, actually, and I know a lot of great martial artists. And you can teach an actor martial arts, but you can't teach a martial artist how to act. Very difficult. That's why a martial art, like a real martial artist, will never win an Academy Award.
Yeah.
Right. The movie will never be at the point where it can win an Academy Award. But you can take someone, a great actor, and teach them pretty, mediocre martial arts. I mean, that's how. They made Eric Roberts look like he was a great martial artist and best of the best.
I thought he was for a long time.
I'm like, wow, like
martial arts?
He pulled it off.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Right.
So yeah, no, I agree completely. And you can, but like I said, there's some martial artists you can tell some of them take it seriously and actually go into, like Chuck Norris took acting lessons. Jeff Speakman took acting lessons. So you can tell the ones who take it seriously. They're not relying just on their martial. I mean, Chuck Norris, like I said, he's no Sidney Poitier, but he's put in some good acting. He's had some good acting roles. And I love Walker.
Yeah.
I mean, I loved Walker Texas Ranger. It was a good show. The original, not the remake.
Right. Yeah. But and I watched a lot of his movies, growing up, like The Octagon and Good Guys Wear Black, and I mean, for someone that likes martial arts, they're great movies.
Yeah.
Right. For someone that's looking for like an Academy Award, it's not going to be an Academy Award winner.
Right. I still watch Sidekicks with my kids, the Chuck Norris movie.
Sidekicks.
His fight with Joe Piscopo, I laugh out loud every time I watch it. It's so good.
So when I was at that Glendale school that I told you about, I actually taught the managers of AMC movie theaters.
Nice.
And Chuck Norris had come in town. This is my kind of claim to fame. Chuck Norris had come into town to do autograph signings at the movie theaters. So they hired me to be his bodyguard. Well, kind of bodyguard. So what I would do is I would just stand at the side of the table just to make sure that, no one did anything they weren't supposed to. So I was like, I was Chuck Norris's bodyguard.
That's awesome. That's great. Well, and anything else you want to mention before I let you go? Anything you want to promote? Anything coming up? Or
Well, I did have one story that I wanted to tell about Grandmaster Jhoon Rhee as a person.
Go ahead. Perfect.
Right?
Yes.
And I think this kind of applies in today's times, but I think it also gives you an idea of the type of person he was. And so Grandmaster Rhee had a school. He first opened in Texas. I don't know if you knew this, but in 1952, he moved in from Korea. He served in the Korean military, but then he went to school in the University of Texas in San Antonio, and he had opened a school in Texas. That's where he had kind of run into Jeff Smith and the big guys, Jeff Smith, Pat Burleson, Skipper Mullins, all from the Texas area. He had moved to Washington, D.C. because he wanted to be closer to the people that influence the United States, democracy, right? But he had a school in 1960. He had a school, and this was, segregation was still going on in the United States in 1960. And he had a Taekwondo school, and he was open for classes. There's a guy that walked in, and he came in through the back door, and his name was Fred Simon. And Grandmaster Jhoon Rhee said, "Where'd you come from?" And he said, I came in through the back door. And he said, "Why'd you come in through the back door?" He's like, "Well, I'm colored, and we're not allowed to come in through the front door, so I came through the back door." He said, "This is ridiculous." So he walked him to the front. He said, "Walk out, walk back in through this front door." And he walked in through the front door. Grandmaster Rhee was not tolerant of racism one bit, and he saw, and of course he was an immigrant. He's Korean, so he's like, this makes no sense. So he wanted to accept all people, and he wanted to set an example, and he wanted Taekwondo to be a vehicle to deliver the message that, we need to build a better place regardless of race or religion, right? So 1960 is when he had Fred Simon walk in through the front door. 8 years later, he became the first African-American instructor in the country.
Wow.
And Grandmaster Rhee, that was his thing.
That's awesome.
It is awesome. And Fred Simon just passed away pretty recently, but I had the privilege of meeting him. He was a fantastic person.
That's a great story. I love it.
So,
nice. Good way to end. Mr. Pineda, I just want to thank you so much. Seriously, this has been so much fun. I've loved hearing your stories. And when I go visit my son in Arlington, I definitely want to pop in and check out your school. So.
Oh, please do. Please do. Yeah.
It'd be fun to meet in person. So, but seriously, from the bottom of my heart, I just want to thank you. It's been so much fun.
Oh, thanks so much.
Thanks for listening to Everyday Martial Artist. We hope you will join us every week for a brand new episode with a different martial artist telling their story. If you enjoy the show, be sure to leave us a review. Also, be sure to check out our website at everydaymartialartist.com. There you can find all of our episodes and contact us to suggest guests and ask questions. Again, thanks for listening to Everyday Martial Artist, and we'll see you next week.